Afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Glock. I'm a ships and service and a materials and equipment surveyor for Bureau Veritas Marine and Offshore, and I'm based in Cape Town. Today's webinar or presentation, as the title suggests, is about approvals and certifications of products and service providers in the maritime industry. I'm going to be focusing primarily on classification society related approvals. I'll do my best not to bore everybody. So having a look at the agenda, we're going to start off with a history of classification and class societies, as it provides a pretty good insight into what classification is actually about. Next, we'll talk about recognition or approval of service providers, before moving on to discussing approval and certification of products in the marine industry. Last topic will be manufacturer approval, which is linked to product approval. And then we're going to finish that off with questions and hopefully from our side some answers. I just wanted to issue a disclaimer or note in the beginning that I'm employed by Bureau Veritas and I'm familiar with BV rules. So most of the information contained in this presentation is going to be from a Bureau Veritas perspective. For most other class societies, the procedures will be similar, but please seek clarity from those class societies if you do engage with them so that you get specific guidance and information on what their specific requirements might be. Okay, so here we go. First topic, ship classification. So ship classification as a concept came about in the early to mid 1700s. Maritime trade between Europe and Asia, amongst other places, was booming, and a lot of people were interested in building and operating ships to be able to cash in on the opportunities presented. Great. So as an owner with money to spend, you went down to your local shipyard, paid them your money, and a reasonable time after that, you were the proud owner of a nice, shiny new ship. Eager to get a return on your investment, you outfitted and crewed the ship, and shortly thereafter were hopefully making good money as your ship sailed between various trading ports around the world. Everything was good until suddenly your ship sank and you literally lost everything. Your ship, your cargo, the crew just disappeared. So after that had happened a few times, ship owners realized if they formed groups or clubs, they could share the risk amongst a whole bunch of people in this club, or as they're called, club members. So for example, if I was part of a club that had 10 members and my ship was lost, the risk would be shared by the other 9 members of my club. So I would only have to pay 10% or use 10% of my investment because I could ask for the other 90% back. So that was quite a big step forward in reducing my exposed risk. It worked fine, this new system, until it became apparent that not all ships were built or behaved in the same way. Some owners lost many ships, while other owners didn't lose any ships, but yet they had to keep paying out for other owners in their club that were losing ships all the time. Don't know about you, but I'd be quite irritated if my ships were great and I had to keep paying out somebody else for their ships that were sinking. Sort of defeats the whole object of sharing the risk. So owners, insurers, they became selective about who they wanted in their little group or club or who they wanted to insure. But they needed some sort of mechanism to decide who was a risk, who wasn't a risk, who did they associate with. So to try and provide a solution to this question, insurers and owners started to employ specialists to examine or survey the ships. Their ships of people that wanted to join them, ships of people that wanted to be insured, and asked these surveyors to give an opinion on the vessel and the associated risk of that vessel. So classification law says that in 1760, customers of Edward Lloyd's coffee shop in London set up the Society for the Registry of Shipping, aiming to give merchants and underwriters recorded information on the quality of their vessels. So information that was written down and readily available. The register book rated vessels on the condition of their hulls and equipment. So it gave a rating. This was good, this is bad. And that from that rating, they were able to determine risk. So if you were a ship owner or insurer, you now had someone you could go to and talk to or refer to if you wanted to see whether it was a good idea or not to use a particular vessel. And so we have the birth of the Classification Society. In surveying many ships over many years, surveyors also gained the knowledge as to what was good, what was bad, what worked, what didn't work. And in time, these evolved into a set of guidelines or suggestions on how best to build, operate, and maintain a ship. And this formed the basis for what today we term as class rules. We do the same thing. We have a set of requirements or set of rules that we follow. So if we compare the role of classification societies in the mid-1700s on the left and where we are today in the early 2000s, we see that the common theme remains the management of risk, even more so today. The amount of risk that is involved with that shipping. But it all boils down to managing risk. So let's look at an example that has as much relevance in the 1700s as it does today, the construction of a new ship. As an owner, you have two primary options. Option one is to build without involvement of a class society. So we have a couple of questions that we need to answer. Design code. When we do the design of the vessel, is there a code? What code do we use? What about material strength, or what about vessel strength? How strong must it be? What size must the construction be? What about stability? What material are we going to use? What sort of standard is there for that material? What components are we going to use? What are the quality requirements for those components? Is the equipment that we use fit for purpose? Can it withstand maritime application? When we're in the yard and we attending for what we call surveyed yard, what build standard are we going to build the ship to? Are there tolerances? What are they? What are the fabrication procedures? What works? What doesn't work? What quality requirements need to be in place? A lot of questions. What sort of risk do we have when we follow that route? For option two, which involves building with class society, we have a design code, which is 300 years worth of history as to what's worked or not worked. We have a material standard in terms of thicknesses, quality of the material. We have rules and requirements for components. We have rules and requirements for equipment so that it's fit for purpose. We have build standards. We have tolerances. We have fabrication procedures, quality requirements. So of the two options, which option provides the lower risk value to you as an owner, your insurer, or even your bank? It's going to be option two, and hence the continued role of classification societies in modern shipping. So classification societies definitely still have a benefit and a place in modern day shipping, and most people in the maritime space will acknowledge this. Very few people will disagree that class societies don't bring value. So much so that today there are over 30 classification societies active worldwide. This list is probably not exhaustive, but yeah, you can see it's got extreme relevance because you have more than 30 people or 30 class societies that are, or participating. So, quite a question. So, as time went by, we have group of class societies got together, 12 of them, and in 1968 they formed a organization called IACS, which stands for the International Association of Classification Societies. Together, IACS classes more than 90% of the world's shipping tonnage, so definitely the biggest body in classification. IACS is dedicated to safe ships and clean seas, and most international administrations use IACS member rules and regulations as a basis for their fleet rules and for international statutory regulations. Because IACS is such a big technical voice in shipping, it plays an active part in suggestions and discussions with the IMO and assists with the development of international conventions. Big difference between IACS and one of the requirements for being an IACS member is that you need to comply with minimum quality procedures. So there's standards that need to be met to be a member of IACS. On the bottom right of your presentation, you'll see an audit form for Bureau Veritas. We get audited every year by IACS against a whole set of requirements to make sure that we continue to comply. And one of the other items that has come out of IACS is that there's a lot of commonality between the different groups, and so we have common rule requirements that have been put into place. For example, for welding, we have our own class welding standards, but then we also have IACS minimum standards for approval of welding procedures. Okay, moving on to recognition as a service provider. So typically lots of people involved with shipping. You've got port authorities, you've got financial institutions, class societies, flag state authorities, agents, insurance providers, the IMO, and then we also have service providers for class related services, service providers for statutory services, and OEM and product suppliers. So lots of different people involved. For the sake of this presentation, we're interested in service providers for class, service providers for statutory services, and OEM and product suppliers. For service providers, we provide a recognition scheme. So the purpose of the scheme is to create a network of independent people that are available all over the world that are capable of providing specialized services. There's lots of discussion in the past about it. What are the benefits? One of the benefits is you have people that are specialized in a particular field. So you have specialized people with specialized equipment and specialized procedures doing the work. They're independent from class. The owner's got a choice of who he wants to use. It's supposed to be neutral between the owner and class, as neither one acts as the instructor, or neither one has got a direct say about what the independent person is doing. And then it provides competitive pricing models as well, because you've got different people competing, and so you don't have price fixing. So you've got free market competition. So lots of benefits for class and for owners to be using independent people for class and statutory services. How do we approve these people? So companies providing services such as measurements, tests, or other inspections are approved against a set of rule requirements. So again, we have rules coming in. All right, so approval of service providers, lots of different categories, lots of different services. There's two main categories. We have statutory services on the left, class and or statutory services on the right. Statutory services tend to be related to safety items and items that deal with regulatory approvals as well. So we have items like life jackets, life rafts, radio equipment, self-contained breathing apparatus, VDR, sound level and public address systems, which is mainly for passenger vessels. Same thing with low location lighting, examination of rescue boats, AIS equipment, ballast water management system, which is a new development based on the new ballast water convention, where we now have companies that are accredited to go and test ballast water discharge during the commissioning process. For class, we do approval of companies that do thickness measurements. Thickness measurement is quite an important part of classification, as it gives us an idea of condition of the ship's shell plating and internal structure. We do dive surveys, so we approve people for doing dive surveys. We do inspection of firefighting equipment, tightness testing of cargo hatches, noise level measurements, examination of ro-ro doors, coating inspections, gas carrier membrane inspections, remote inspection techniques. As opposed to crawling around tanks, we can now approve companies to use drone technology to do close-up surveys on vessels. And then finally, cable transit seal systems. So quite a number of different approvals that you can apply for. Okay, so let's look at how we go about getting all these approvals. So the first step is an internal review and assessment of your capabilities. So before we start the whole process about doing what we're going to be approved for and how we're going to be approved and what's involved and spending all the money and running the risk of not actually being approved, you start with doing an internal assessment. You go back to this list. Those are the services that people are requesting or that we can apply for. What are we capable of achieving? Do we have the procedures? Do we have the equipment? Do we have the personnel? You can see the triangle for audits, the audit triangle. So we do that internally. We check that we've got all those in place before we approach class. So yes, we're happy. We've got all those items in place. We approach class and we do an official request to class for recognition as a service provider. Class will then do an initial document review. They'll check all your paperwork. Then they'll do an audit plan, and then we'll transmit that to you, and then we attend for an audit. During the audit, we follow the audit triangle. We check that you've got procedures that are required to do the job. We check that you've got the equipment that's required to do the job, and that you've got the people to operate the equipment and follow the procedures to get the job done. If all of those are in place, we do a practical demonstration to prove that your company can actually function, that it's not just a paper exercise. And then finally, we give, if everything's okay, we give you approval as a recognized service provider. Everybody's still alive out there. I haven't bored you all to death.
Still good, Mark.
All good. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so as part of this internal review and assessment of capabilities, you obviously need to know a little bit of information. So where do you find this information that you need to do this in internal audit and to figure out if you actually meet all the requirements? So there's a couple of places you can, for service suppliers, we can go to the IX website. It's rule note URZ17. I've given you the link. You can download the rule notes and you can do the internal review of your organization and check that you are capable of meeting all the requirements before you engage with class. If you're a Bureau Veritas customer, you would go to rule note NR533, and again, you download it from the internet, or you can approach your other friendly class society. All of them have easy to use websites, and you can access them to obtain the required class-specific information on approval of service providers. Most of them, like I said earlier, will be very, very similar because of this Unified Requirement Rule Note from AISI. Okay, next, type approval and product certificates. So we've spoken about approval as a service provider, but which is basically providing services to class vessels, but we can also now manufacture products that we want to fit onto class vessels. So we have engines, we've got pumps, we've got hatch covers, quite a wide range of products. If you look at a typical ship, there's a lot of different products that go into a ship. You've got raw materials and hull components, refrigeration systems, electrical systems, propulsion systems, hull outfittings, huge amount of material that goes into a ship. People, I don't think, realize how many different components actually get fitted into a ship. And we also have our famous rule notes. If you remember that classification refers to the process of verification against a set of requirements or standards or rules. And we have many different ships types, and so we have many different rules. We've got, for example, rules for the classification of steel ships. There was a message in the chat earlier about yachts, so that would be Rule Note NR 500, which provides rules for the classification and certification of yachts. So a whole lot of different rule sets. We've got rules for the classification of offshore units, and BV alone has 60 different rule sets for marine and offshore vessels and structures, and another 60 odd guidance notes. So lots of paperwork. So many different components that go into the construction of a vessel or marine structure, and many different rules for many different ships, boats, and marine structures. How do we find out what is needed for approval of a particular product? So for Bureau Veritas, we have a rule note called NR 266, requirements for survey of materials and equipment for the classification of ships and offshore units. So what BV have done is they provided a roadmap or a simplified version of all our rule notes. So everything gets put into one little book so that you can now read and then get referred to the various other rule notes. It just provides an overview of general requirements for material certification. When you open the book and you read it, you'll have a lot of pages like this, and we'll just run through it quickly. This is for raw materials and components for a hull. You have a description of the item, and then steps for product certification. And then on the right, in terms of remarks, you can see they've got little notes that refer you to the correct rule note that you would then go and see to get detailed information. If you look at the approval process, just a few key points and how it actually works. It'll start off with a design assessment or approval. So you would generate your design, and you would then send it off to class for review. Class will look at your design and they will review it against the applicable rule notes. Same thing with material. You would choose your material, you would send your material selection to class, and class will then look at material selection and review it against the applicable rule notes. If both of those meet rule requirements, the design assessment or design approval section of the approval is passed. And then we do the second phase, which we call survey at works, which is examination of your prototype. We do physical examination, we do testing to check that it meets the design requirements or the theoretical expected requirements. And if visually it and quantitatively it meets the design assessment documentation, and testing meets the testing requirements, the product is awarded a type approval certificate and or a product certificate depending on the category of approval. We have different categories of approval at BV. There are 3 different categories, and each category has a different level of BV involvement. RBV products are products that we need to certify individually. For example, steel plating on a hull, those are done per batch produced, and we get a product certificate for those. We have HBV products, which are mass-produced products. This example, we've used fuses. They're basically similar products that are produced in large volumes, need to meet requirements, but provided the manufacturing technique is maintained, the product that comes out of the production line is going to be the same. And then lastly, we've got DBV products, which are products like cable ties, where we have a design assessment, but we don't really get involved in the verification of the production. And on the left, you'll see that as the product risk, or the risk of the product to the vessel reduces, so our involvement. A little bit more detail.
Sorry, wait, just hang on, Mark. I'm trying to mute somebody's not muted. Just trying to see who's speaking. Never mind. There we go. Go ahead.
Okay. So a little bit more detail on what we just spoke about in terms of categories. You can see that for RBV product, individual involvement, where BV are involved pretty much in the whole production, a lot of involvement. And then you've got DBV, where basically we do a design type approval, and that's the limit of our involvement. Okay, so product approval. So if we're going to decide that we've got a product that we want to have approved by class, how do we go about getting it approved? So first step, again, similar to the original discussion about service providers, is to do a review and an opportunity analysis. What opportunities are available to me? Is there a local shipyard that needs certain components? Are they importing those components? Can I make them? Can I approach them to make them locally on their behalf? Find a market. Once you have a product and you've decided what you want to manufacture, do a rule review to assess the requirements, or what you need to actually be achieving. And then do an assessment of your capabilities, or your capability to actually achieve the standard that's required. So effectively, do you have the necessary skills, process, material to meet the rule requirement? So check and make sure before you start the whole process that you can actually achieve what you're hoping to achieve. If your internal exercise says yes, you then approach class for product approval. First step in this is the initial review and contractual agreement. This is the first and the most important step, because it sets the tone for the rest of the approval process. It's very important at this stage. We explained earlier that there's lots of different rules, lots of different components to be manufactured. And it's very important that we are quite specific about what product you're manufacturing and according to what particular rule set. When they do the design review, when they do the surveyed works, when they do the testing, it'll all be done against the agreed rule type and rule note. So if we get that wrong in the beginning, it potentially will derail the whole process. So very, very important that we are very specific and we get it 100% correct, exactly what we're going to be doing. Once we've signed the initial contract, we do the design review and material review. Explained that earlier, followed by the surveyed works and testing, and then we do a final review and analysis. And as I said here, as per agreed rule requirements that were agreed in the initial contract. So again, very important we get the initial contract correct. If we pass the requirements, we end up with the type approval or product certificate. if we don't make the requirements, we end up with some very sad people. All right, some of the documentation. On the left, we have the application form for type approval. This is the form that I explained to you about how important it is we get it right. See near the bottom, there's a whole lot of different boxes that we get to tick about specific rule sets. BV provide guidelines for type approval, whereby we've simplified our rules and we give these to our customers. So, for example, this is if you were going to get a valve approved, it would give you a detailed summary of what actually the requirements are, so that you know as much as we do in terms of trying to get the products approved. And then once the process is completed, you'd end up with a type approval certificate, as you see on the right. Okay, burning question. Multiple class societies all want your product to comply with their rule requirements and have a certificate issued by them for use on their ships and structures. So often, as a manufacturer, you end up with a multitude of similar class certificates all issued for the same product. So you've got, I don't know, bearing, you've got BV approval, you've got Lloyd's approval, you've got DNV approval. It's all the same part. It's all tested in the same way, but everybody wants to have their piece of the action. And it is an issue in the industry. And in Europe now, IMSA or European Union have decided that they actually are now forcing through legislation that class societies start to work together now to try and reduce the number of different approvals that need to be given to a particular product. So in the bottom here, it's 12 of the class societies have got together and they formed this group called the EU Recognized Organization Mutual Recognition Group. And effectively, just read out of here, it says recognized organizations, which is class societies, in appropriate cases should agree on the technical and procedural conditions under which they will mutually recognize the class certificates for material, equipment, and components based on equivalent standards. So a good example is hull plating. So in South Africa, the TEL is our local steel supplier. Sorry about that. And their factory is approved by Lloyd's. Same rule set as BV would use to approve the facility, but it's Lloyd's approved. So the plate that comes out, it meets Lloyd's requirements, which is exactly the same as BV requirements. So we accept the Lloyd's plate for use on BV vessels based on the fact that it meets all of our rule requirements as well, rather than demanding that the plate now goes off to the lab and gets retested, because we all know that it's going to be tested against exactly the same standards and have the same results. It's a work in progress. Not all products are recognized at this stage. It's something that they are, like I said, a work in progress. Every year there's more and more products getting added to the list. But yeah, definitely making progress there. All right, so again, where do you find more information? If you are considering getting your products approved and you want to check that you are capable of meeting the requirements before you start on the journey, you can go to the IX website. You can go to the Bureau Veritas Rule Note website, or again, approach your friendly class society, who all have easy to use websites. Or right, manufacturer's approval. So you now have a product which is type approved and you're quite happy, and now you want to manufacture the product. So BV issue different types of manufacturing facility approvals. And generally the idea behind manufacturing facility approvals is to confirm that each subsequent product produced meets the original specification of the originally reviewed product. So we checked and tested and made sure that the original type approved product meets all the rule requirements. but we don't really want to stand around and watch every single piece of material that you manufacture come off the production line. So we need to come up with some other type of system. Generally, the manufacturer or works recognition certificate depends on what type of product you're going to be producing. If you need a product that has an individual or batch certificate, then unfortunately BV have to be there. So there's no point in you having approval to manufacture products without BV being there if BV have to be there. So RBV products generally require batch certification. HBV products, like I said, mass-produced products, we don't have to individually approve each item. I'm going to stand at the line and watch each welding rod or each fuse come off the production line and check each one. We generally accept that they're all consistent. So we can offer a certification program whereby they are automatically approved without us having to test every single one. And then the last product type was DBV products, which are not required to be certified by the society individually or per batch, and we don't even have to be there when you manufacture them. This is a summary of what we just spoke about. 3 categories: RBV, HBV, DBV. Design assessment, which is the first phase, and we can call that type approval. You've noticed second item, case by case. Often people have a product manufactured as a one-off. One thing to note is that everything goes through a design assessment. You can see right down to DBV, everything is checked against the rules in terms of the design. For production survey, we have, for RBV, we have mode 1 or mode 2. And HBV, we have mode 2, and then DBV not required. So what's this mode 1, mode 2 business all about? So we offer 2 different types of approvals for manufacturers. Mode 2 is works recognition. So it's generally used for RBV or HBV products, and it's linked to a specific facility. So we review and check a specific production facility. So you might have 7 different factories all making the same product, but we will attend each, we'd have to attend each factory to have all 7 approved. If you only want to make BV products in one factory, we'd attend that one factory. So it's linked to a specific facility. It requires ISO 9001 aligned quality management system. So you need a management system, it needs to be aligned to ISO 9001. We basically ask for 9001. We do an initial audit to confirm that you meet all the rule requirements and that we can get comfort that all the products that you're going to be producing are consistent and are going to be meeting the rule note even when we're not there. We do maintenance audits to confirm that we're maintaining your end of the bargain. And every 4 years, we do a renewal audit. Some manufacturers can apply for mode 1. So if we go back one screen, we'll see under production survey for RBV, we've got recognition mode 2 with inspection at works. So effectively, although you have this mode 2 certification, we still have to attend from time to time. Or you can go for mode 1 with follow-up audits. So RBV products can apply for mode 1 recognition subject to agreement with BV. Again, linked to specific facilities and mandatory to have an ISO 9001 certificate. Mode 1 is an agreed alternative survey scheme that allows the manufacturer to carry out the required tests and examinations partly or totally without the attendance of the surveyor when a society certificate is required. It's quite a mouthful, but basically, normally for RBV products, BV has to attend for every product. If you are lucky enough to get a mode 1, the society delegates the authority to the quality management system of the manufacturer. So you can apply for mode 1, do your own testing according to the BV rule note without BV having to be in attendance. Saves a lot of time and money. All right, conclusion. Just a brief recap of what we've been speaking about. Classification is compliance with rules designed to minimize risk. It's part of this organization seeking to provide services to class ships or components for the construction and repair of class ships. Need to follow certain rule sets. If you're seeking to be a service provider, you would follow the rule set for BV, it's NR533 or URZ17. If you were looking to produce a product and you wanted the product to be approved, you would have to follow the specific rule note based on that product and that ship type. If you were looking for company approval, again, for BV, it would be rule note 320. And again, product approval is linked to company approval. It's not possible to just get company approval without a product that's linked to it. Important thing to remember is approvals granted here in South Africa are valid worldwide. There's lots of companies now locally that are making products locally and are exporting them. And definitely something that needs to be considered. Right, that's the end of my presentation. Questions, hopefully answers. Anybody got any questions that you'd like to ask or any part of the presentation you'd like me to go back over?
Thanks, Mark. I think that was a really great presentation. It gave us the full circle on what we need to do and what industry needs to do to get the certification. Okay, the floor is open. I would recommend you raise your hand. Either I will keep my eye on the chat, so the person that raises his hand can just say who do they address the question to. We are a little bit behind on a Q&A, so it could either be to Andrew from the DTIC, to myself, Nicoline from the AISI, or to Mark. I will also check the comments. I see there's also a few comments coming in, but if there's anybody that can address a question to myself, Mark, or Andrew, please go ahead. Mark, from the questions, I think the first one that was unanswered was how many class-approved boats are there? Well, let me just scroll up to that specific question and we'll address it from the start. How many yachts are class built in South Africa? I do not have that answer. Mark, do you maybe have an answer from BV side?
Is it yachts specifically or ships? Yachts.
It's specifically yachts. I know from a certain size, but please go ahead, elaborate.
It's hard to, I can't give an answer. It depends on, it changes from year to year. Some years there's 10, some years there's 2. It's something we're looking to increase in South Africa because we have such a big yacht building industry, and it's something that can make our industry on a different note, something that can make our industry a lot more competitive on the world stage. But yeah, I would say anything up to 10, 20 class yachts a year, but that's a guess. Sorry, can't really give you an accurate number there.
Oh, good. Then I've got a question here from Grant Toy from Symbitech. Symbitech is manufacturing a robot in and out of water vehicle for UWild. Would it be possible? Would the device be approved or the service or both?
You would be approved because it's the service that provides the outcome. So you are effectively, if you think about what you're doing with, okay, so talking about in-water surveys. In-water surveys are done, the full term is in-water survey in lieu of docking. So in terms of a class term regime, you would have to dock your vessel every twice in 5 years. We are able to do a underwater survey in lieu of docking, provided you meet certain requirements for every second docking survey. So you would only need to put your vessel into dock every 5 years as opposed to every 2.5 years. For the in-water survey, we need to be able to see as much as, or as close as possible to what we would be seeing if the vessel was in dock. So that's, your camera technology would have to be sufficient, your lighting would have to be sufficient. How you achieve that, not really too stressed, as long as you have the ability to meet the requirements. The only challenge that you're going to have is for underwater survey, we don't only do a hull inspection, we also have to take measurements of the tail shafts, wear down readings and bearing clearances, and the same thing for rudders. So unless you have a robotic arm or some other mechanism that allows you to do that, you'd still have to put a diver in the water to achieve that. Did that answer the question?
Nicoline?
Any other questions?
Oh, sorry, you just are you still here? You just thanks, Mark.
Yeah,
No problem.
Indication, can somebody else still hear Mark?
We can all hear Mark. We couldn't hear you, Nicoline.
Hi, I've just been thrown off the call, but I'm back. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah. Okay. So thanks, Nicoline. You, I think, Grant, I believe your question was answered. Can I just get an indication from you? Okay, then I'm going to move on to, thanks, Mark. I'm going to move on to Vince's question. Is there a list of database for the products recognized at the EU MRTA?
Yes, there is. If you go to the next screen, just give me a second. You should be able to see at the bottom, there's a website available for them.
Thanks, Mark. And then we've got a question from Derek. Is there a list of current class approved suppliers or OEMs, equipment components used in the marine industry in South Africa?
Yes.
I was going to say no, but you can give a more diplomatic answer.
Well, we have a website like everybody does nowadays called Approval Explorer. I'll share the email address where you can log on and you can use different filters to select different areas where approvals have been granted. So if you were looking for a specific product, you could put it into the filter and you could see who was approved by BV for that particular product. If you wanted to zone into a particular area, you wanted to see who made a particular product in a particular area, you could do that as well. It applies to both service providers and to products. But the big issue, and I just need to caution you on that, is that we're dealing with worldwide recognition here. So although you have a supplier in Durban, he's not restricted to only be operating or only manufacturing or selling products in Durban. He can literally sell all over the world.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. I think we've cleared the questions in the chat, unless I've missed one.
How long does it typically take to get approval, and what is the cost to apply?
I think we're good, Marie. I think that's everything.
Oh, there was Grant, yeah. Okay.
Nicoline, there's a bit of a delay on your side. Any other hands? I can't see any other hands. Any other questions for us on the program specific? Nicoline, then I think let's see if your timing's back.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you can go on.
Thanks, Marie. Thank you so much. Mark, I've written down a few questions, and I think it's the type of questions that I get for the IAC societies from my side that I would just like to incorporate in here for information's sake. So first off, recertification. If class approval or type certification is granted to a company, is there a loose estimate on how long or how frequent does recertification need to occur?
Sorry, I lost the bit there. It was a bit funny. Say that again. Is that for a product or for service provider?
You can discuss both, but let's discuss type approval first.
It's generally, if I remember correctly, about 4 years is how long your approval lasts for.
Excellent. And for a service, or is it depending on which service?
It's again 3 to 4 years. I think it's 3 years for service providers.
Okay. Another question that I've written down. Are the rule notes freely available, or do they come at a charge similar to your ISO standard?
No, it's free. All class societies, IACs, everybody, they all provide free rule notes. For BV, if you look at, I can share it with you again. Let's find it. If you look at the, where did I put it? Sorry, guys. Okay, if there's our BV rule note website. If you go to that website, all our rule notes are freely available.
Okay, we've got a question. What is the typical cost of type approval accreditation?
It's a bit of a, how long is a piece of string, because it depends on the product that you're trying to approve and the complexity of approval. Yeah, it's a tough one. Sorry, I can't give an accurate answer because, like I said, you can have an engine that costs X and a fuse that costs Y.
Agreed.
The easiest thing is to send me an email, and what we normally do is we provide a comprehensive quote and proposal for any product that you're considering having approved. So we'll provide a cost, we'll provide a time frame, and we'll provide a set of rule requirements that will need to be met.
And then from Christian, Christian, you said, do you guys work together with SANS? Who's that question directed to? Mark, let's give it a go towards BV. Does BV have any direct relationship with SANS?
No, we don't. The only the only possible link is that testing facilities in some cases need to be 17025 approved, which is accreditation issued by SANAS as part of a global quality management system. But SANAS approval unfortunately doesn't count for doesn't carry any weight with class, simply because SANAS is a South African system and we're dealing with a worldwide approval.
Excellent, thank you. Then, guys, if you still have more questions, please put them in the chat. No problem, Christian. I think that should have answered your South African national standards, not SANAS.
Oh, South African standards again don't apply.
Okay, moving on. Then from my side, Mark, I was very interested in the IBV, the HBV, and the DBV. So my question here, is there a list of components and where they fit in to see, okay, this component is an IBV, this component is an HBV?
Good points. Yes, there is, but I'd need to dig it out I can send it to you. There is 266, NR266 would give you pretty much indication of would be RBV and
Okay, yes, I see that. The second. Okay, there's another question coming in from Admiral Watson. How much product testing can be done in South Africa? It seems that there is a shortage of testing facilities. Well, this is true. Mark, I'll give over to you as well to give PV's perspective.
It is an issue that strange enough, we can actually test quite a lot of products in South Africa, and we are pushing to have all the type approvals that we do in South Africa tested in South Africa, and we're encouraging people to use local testing facilities. We tend to be a little bit of a, I don't know how to explain it. We tend to not trust our own abilities, and we'll find people, even in neighboring countries like Mozambique, we did some product approvals there, and they were sending stuff all the way off to Portugal and Spain, where we had the facilities in South Africa, they were able to achieve it. So it's a lot of education that's going on to teach people that we can actually approve products here. One of the testing types that we can't do, unfortunately, is fire rating. It's something we're looking at, which is quite a tragedy, because we have a lot of rock wool and other products that could be type approved for shipping use, but they need to be tested in specific IMO approved laboratories, and we don't have any in South Africa. But other than that, again, we spoke earlier about SANAS, and when it comes to product testing, generally SANAS approved facilities are part of a global AISI quality standard, and they are accepted for a lot of products. And we have quite a couple of SANAS 17025 labs in South Africa. You go to, just seeing Kevin Watson's email list, if you go to the SANAS website, you can select different accredited institutions, and there is a link that you can go to there which details all the 17025 listed laboratories in South Africa.
Thanks, Mark. Kevin, does that answer your questions? Excellent. Okay, Mark, another question from my side is, how is type approval affected by the different sizes, and how does companies go about that manufacture one size valve, but they would, for example, want certification for a range of valves with the same design?
We generally offer a global type approval. You've got a choice. You can approve every single one, but for a valve of the same design, for example, that's same components, same material, same design, just a different diameter size, you would get a global approval for that size range of valves. So you would specify from, I don't know, 50 millimeters up to 200 millimeters. What happens sometimes, though, is if you have a vast range of products, so if you had, for example, a 50 millimeter valve and a 2-meter valve, the construction would not be the same. Although it's nominally the same, it would be different. So there would be some point where you would have to change to a different construction methodology, and then that separate set of valves for the bigger size or the smaller size would need separate approval.
Excellent, thank you. And I don't see any more questions coming, so I'm going to just post my last question. For the Mode 2, that you indicated that Mode 2 is facility-based, the Mode 2 certification. If a company decides to expand to a second larger facility, would it be cheaper to get your certification for the second facility, or do you start absolutely from scratch, even though the name of the facility is the same?
Generally, for facility approvals, we generally try and we've standardized the rates to try and make it fair for everybody, A and B, and actually try to make it attractive for people to do these approvals. So it depends, again, if it's a huge facility that's completely different, the production methodology's changed. Everything is is completely different. It would cost more than if we just needed to basically transfer everything that was in the one facility to the other facility.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Mark. Just checking, is there any more questions for Mark or for myself for the AISI hosted marine program?
Kevin's got a question. Can one get a repair approval for an overseas manufactured class product? A repair approval is a class issue dealing with ships and service, and it's not particularly related to material and equipment. So there's no, it's a case-by-case item that would be dealt with by a ships and service surveyor.
Local for equipment. I'm not following. Kevin, would you mind to, Admiral Watson, would you mind to unmute and just address the question to Mark directly?
Thanks very much. Yeah, just a question. If you're using certified products, often when you repair it and maintain it, or repair it especially, it needs to be prepared to the same class standard, but you're not going to use it. Do you need to get some sort of class approval for that facility to do the repair to class standard, or how would you handle that, Mark?
Okay, so from BV's point of view, we don't approve we don't approve shipyards or repair companies. If you had a valve that failed and you were trying to do a repair on the valve, you could submit a repair proposal to class. Again, that would go to ships and service, and they would look at your proposed repair, what material you were using. Does the material, I mean, you could source locally produced material provided you had the right paperwork with it, and do the repair, and they would accept it. So yeah, it is possible to do local repairs on foreign approved products. And again, it's because those products are designed to be used worldwide. So there's no reason to import products from their home country if it's available locally. Does that answer the question?
I think so. It probably needs more exploring, but yeah, it opens a doorway to growing companies to get towards manufacturing class approved stuff if they can just start repairing the stuff first. But thanks, it does answer. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, no problem.
Excellent. For the interest of time, I'm going to just take this last question in the chat from Derek. So Mark, from my side, thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate it, and I'm sure industry as well. And yeah, we look forward to further engagement.
Can I just quickly, before we go away, I just want to answer Derek's question. And the answer to Derek's question is it's about mindset. When you're going down this road, you're correct. South African market's quite small. You have to change your mindset to become a global player. I don't want to mention too many names. I don't know if I'm allowed to, but there are companies that have started small locally that have expanded quite dramatically and are exporting huge amount of products overseas. So if you're going to only rely on the local markets, yes, it's probably not worth your while. But remember that there's lots of other initiatives out there encouraging people to get into the export market as well. Okay.
Thanks, Mark. Derek, what I can add on there is, yes, it's definitely something that's been highlighted. And I hope that through the AISI program and the opportunities that we provide to assist with these type of certifications, assist with that, with your question, to make it more sustainable. Oh. With that, Derek, do you have a follow-up question for Mark or myself? Okay, excellent.